Hello and welcome to this week's episode of GIANT's Healthy Innovators TV. My name is Barry Shrier. I'm your host. I'm the founder of GIANT Health. We're an international community of nearly 329,000 people. And our strapline is that we serve everybody whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. As a reminder, we have an upcoming International Healthcare Innovation event coming up on the 4th and 5th of December in London, England. And we invite all of you listeners and all of you subscribers to come to the event. You can learn more about that on our website, www.giant.health. We also invite all of our listeners and viewers to ask questions and to come up to us with ideas and suggestions regarding content. We love engaging and supporting all of you. So thank you very much and looking forward to hearing from you. Lastly, if you like these videos, please remember to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That will help us to help you. So every week, we love to feature some of the leading innovators and champions of technology innovation and the advancement of innovation in healthcare and services relating. So we're very proud today to bring you Paul from Cydar and Chris from MLC, My Language Connection. And so really looking forward to speaking with you guys. We'll start by asking you guys to introduce yourselves and then very keen to learn about your businesses, what you guys are doing. And we're also excited today to talk about one of the most important central subjects in the world overlapping between tech and innovation in healthcare. And that is AI, artificial intelligence, sometimes called machine learning, sometimes called glorious Excel spreadsheets and other things. So we're looking forward to speaking to you guys all about that. So let's start with you, Paul. Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for having us on. Excited to talk about this subject, which is close to my heart.
Yeah, likewise. Absolutely. And we're glad that you're with us and we're grateful for your time. So thank you for that. So Paul, just to begin with very briefly, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit briefly about your career background and obviously what you guys are doing at, is it Cydar or Cydar?
Cydar Medical.
Cydar, beg your pardon.
Welcome. Well, so my background originally was as a scientist in biotech area through a degree, PhD and postdocs. I'm a scientist at heart, which is why innovation always appeals to me.
Nice.
I made my career through in the corporate area, supporting healthcare companies in equity markets, raising money, M&A. I ended up at a leading UK med device company that had grown over the years through acquisition. So I was very familiar with the journey of taking early stage technology through early commercialization and scaling it. I left that company in 2019 and joined the board of Cydar Medical. That was really a transition from the physical device world into AI, a leading AI business, highly innovative business. And really my motive there was just keen interest in the potential impact AI could have in healthcare. I saw it as tremendous opportunity and to learn more and to be part of that. I've been with Cydar for 3 years now as we scale our business, and I'll be happy to say a little bit more about Cydar as we go through the conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And it's great to hear about your science background and in the evolving world where science itself and concepts of truth and reality seem to be challenged more and more. We absolutely welcome everybody who takes an evidence-based, real-world scientific perspective on things. So great to have you on board. Thank you. And likewise, Chris, nice to see you again and welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Barry. Nice to see you again. Great to be back on GIANT Health TV.
Well, we love working with you guys, and we're really proud to have our partnership with you and MLC. So thank you for that. We're grateful. And again, if you don't mind, if you can just introduce yourself, love to hear a little bit about your career and what you guys are doing currently.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the head of partnerships for life sciences here at MLC, My Language Connection. So what we do is essentially partner with companies like Cydar, so highly innovative medical companies, to provide language services. So that could be translation services for instructions for use. It could be interpreting services for meetings. It could be voiceover services, anything that's kind of multilingual. In terms of my own background, I studied linguistics, so I studied German and French, and kind of got into the business world of the language services industry. It's kind of sideways from that. I've been doing it now for 14 years, but always focused on life sciences companies. So
Excellent.
Global pharma, medical device, CROs, etc.
Yes. Excellent. Well, again, thanks for joining us and glad to have you in the conversation today. And interesting about your background in linguistics and the challenges. I mean, for example, I get letters from my GP and there's like maybe 14 or more language translations in little paragraphs on the back of the letter. And at my tender young age of 62, I do recall not having that type of translational additional service made available by healthcare providers decades ago. So that's really cool, isn't it? That, we are, at least in that simple little example, making progress concerning ourselves with, language issues and challenges of patients, and folding that into the delivery of healthcare services. So I know it's quite a basic, obvious example, but really interesting nonetheless.
No, I think it's a good example as well, because I think a lot of people think of language and translation about, exporting into other markets, expanding abroad, but they don't think of all the people who don't speak English as a first language here in this country, and in NHS and within NHS innovation. It's a big topic at the moment. So
yeah, excellent. Of course, as you can hear, I'm an American, so I would like to get your help translating from English to proper American. Maybe you can support that for me later on.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk.
Yeah, no, pardon me for being cheeky. But anyhow, glad to have you guys on board. And one of the main themes we want to talk about is, of course, a huge topic across all the world and across all industries and aspects of our activities in business these days. And of course, that's AI. And so very keen just to hear about, topics of AI. Number one, what is AI? Number two, how does that impact us as people in the world working in healthcare, some of the challenges and problems that AI is solving, but also challenges and problems that AI is bringing. So, Paul, if you don't mind, let's start with you, please. So maybe, like I said, just a little foundational stuff. I have to assume that unless you've been living in a cave unconnected to any media whatsoever, everyone has heard of AI. But let's start fairly basically, if that's okay.
Yeah, great. And I think it's probably having a more profound impact on people's lives than they even assume. So there's some very topical issues in the media, of course, on the back of ChatGPT, etc. But it's evident everywhere. Whether it's in using Google Maps on your phone, your devices, using Spotify, it's just imbibed its way into every part of our lives, and we come to rely on it. It's about not even realizing that. I think the exciting thing is it's really coming of age in healthcare in terms of having a very big potential impact and benefit to healthcare. But AI is a big subject in its own right. I mean, it encompasses many facets, as you say. Really, at the simplistic level, it's a part of computer science using algorithms to be able to demonstrate behavior we typically associate with human intelligence, whether that's recognizing an image, be able to take a decision, looking at patterns in data. It can be very broad, and within that we often hear about other subsets such as machine learning, where you're able to train an algorithm to perform a very specific task, often as a consequence it's extremely good at a narrow task on which you've trained it.
Yes.
And other forms of AI such as deep learning, which are intended to be structured, for example, in a neural network where you've got layers of algorithms and statistical methods that are tended to be structured mimicking the structure of a brain with neurons that are interconnected. So you can build some real strong, powerful, broad capabilities by this layering of different algorithms that provide learning as information and data passes through them. So it's a very broad topic. I think it's a very general application. I think it has a potential application in every industry. A number of them are very well advanced. I think healthcare is catching up.
Yes.
I think it has a big role to basically support innovation and transform healthcare to address real global problems in healthcare. I think you talk about people being aware of AI, but I think everyone's acutely aware of the challenges in healthcare around access to care, democratizing care, the challenging of resources, in the health systems. We spend an inordinate amount of money on healthcare. I mean, in the UK, I think it's north of 180 billion. In the US, north of about $4.5 trillion. And yet it's still not doing the job we hoped of it in terms of the challenges.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting and a very helpful general introduction. Thank you for that, Paul. Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think what Paul says about the way in which AI has touched every industry is very pertinent. So, in our industry, for example, in language services, AI has obviously machine translation is a big topic that people talk about a lot.
Okay.
That's a huge application of AI. Everybody knows about Google Translate as an example. That's just one. There are others available, I suppose.
Yes.
But there's been a lot of hype. Yes, there's been a lot of disruption. There's been a lot of pushback within the industry against that. So And that's just one example, really. It's kind of a fundamental example. But if I think also about processes within certain technologies that are used in translation processes, those processes have been affected by AI, even coming into voiceovers, multilingual voiceovers, and AI voices that are produced now, which are, again, quite impressive. So
Yes.
it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic in our industry. It's a huge topic in Paul's industry too. So
Yes, excellent.
yeah, a lot of disruption.
Yeah, no, fascinating. Paul, what are examples on a very practical basis of what is AI doing in healthcare right now? And then beyond that, what does that point to in terms of, future opportunity to, I have to assume, healthcare is what? About achieving better healthcare outcomes
Right.
at lower cost.
Yeah, so that's the whole point, is we've got to be able to bring new innovation to provide better care, to provide more predictable care consistently globally. And I think AI is having a big impact in a number of areas. And I think in this period of transition, part of the challenge is just finding the right home for it. There's things that AI does very well, and there's things that humans certainly do better. So just find the balance between the types of tasks that should be properly supported by AI versus figuring out the critical bits the humans should be doing, I think is a general challenge. Obviously, that creates fears and concerns about, you hear the media hype about people being replaced by AI, etc. We don't see that in healthcare. We don't see that, certainly not our objective. Our objective is to use AI to support and augment the human in the loop, to free them up from rather mundane tasks or detailed tasks which AI can do much better, and give them back the time to focus on the bits where the human matters, where a clinician may be making very contextual judgment based on their experience, or the very human interaction. Patient care is ultimately about a human interaction, a richness of personal interaction. So we certainly want to preserve that. Where we've seen it get traction, some good examples would be in radiology, where people are routinely scanned with more innovative types of imaging now, from a simple CAT scan or otherwise. And there's a huge body of data to be reviewed to try and identify disease earlier. AI is very good at a form of computer vision of spotting patterns in images and be able to standardize those observations. So you've certainly seen some effective applications that can scan database of images very, very, very quickly, spot potential problems, and just triage them, just flag them as a concern. So again, not looking to replace the human diagnosis, but what they can do is just provide an alert, an early flag, early awareness, to ensure they're brought to attention of the clinicians and can be acted on very, very, very quickly. And often we see in key examples, whether it's a stroke or aneurysm, other form of developing problem, being able to spot and intervene earlier is actually the key to better outcome. So time is very much a big driver in trying to drive efficiencies as well as early intervention, better outcomes, and AI can really help with that.
No, that's extremely interesting. I guess there are great, examples of where machines are better than people at things, pattern recognition, like you said. It seemed like maybe 5 years ago or something, everyone was professing the kind of doom and gloom, robots will take over and we'll be enslaved by them. I mean, I personally don't subscribe to that, although I wish there was someone to cook my breakfast that simply consumed electricity and nothing else. On the other hand, there seems at the very least to be a good, I don't know, some people might say 5 years, I'm hoping 100 or 200 years more of humans being better than machines at stuff. So for example, Chris, in translation and in understanding language and understanding, nuance and cultural differences and blah, blah, blah. It's not just purely mathematical, is it? It's not just this word in this language equals this word in that language. Let's just spit out an algorithmic answer. Is that right? Where's the kind of human bit in the AI bit?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think translation is simultaneously an art and a science. Even highly technical translation. Even highly technical translations still have that human element, that nuance. There may be preferred terms, for example, that should be used company by company that can't be standardized at a mass level, at a mass data level. And so I think, the demise of the human translator has been predicted for a couple of decades now. First with translation memory, which was a kind of a productivity tool. It's now standard part of the process within all translation processes, pretty much, certainly at an enterprise level. So that's a tool. It's essentially a database of previously translated content. That's now standard, but when that first emerged, it was the translator was on the way out, and now of course we have the same thing with AI. But
yeah,
there is still that place for highly specialist human translation, and I think in healthcare it's more in evidence probably than anywhere else. Maybe more on the legal side as well, but also in healthcare there are so many areas that are, if you think of patient-reported outcomes and things like that, they differ so much across cultures that it's really impossible to standardize what pain means to someone in the UK versus what pain means to someone in India, just to pick an example.
yeah. That's very interesting.
Machine.
Yeah. I mean, one day will all this boil down to algorithms, or is it just a matter of time where we can? Is it merely a matter of time until we can mathematically model 100% of all human stuff?
We want to get closer to that. It's certainly an ambition, and I think part of that goes to just joining up the data we have. So just thinking about and making the most of the existing and future innovations. So to give you an example, there was over the last 20 years, there's been a very successful, massive shift from open surgery to minimally invasive image-guided surgery. So just a little example, personal example, my father had a heart valve replacement 20 years ago, where they literally had to crack his chest open. So it took him, a year to get over that. 15 years later, and he's had a subsequent heart valve. They did it replacement through a small incision in his near the groin, putting a catheter in, going to the location, directing that through the blood vessels, and changing the heart valve. So he was up and out in a day. I mean, that from an efficiency, healthcare efficiency and cost point of view, and a personal patient impact point of view, a tremendous shift.
Yes.
And that's been evident in many other types of procedures, from liver, from oncology, pulmonology, heart disease, and other areas. But one of the uncertainties is with that shift, the clinician has challenging seeing what they're doing inside the body. And we see remaining highly variable outcomes. I mean, sometimes 30-40% of these procedures aren't working effectively the first time. So just as an example, what Cydar has developed is an AI solution that produces a digital map of the patient, of the relevant vessels, and it uses AI to update that map through the patient journey. So the clinician can, using a 3D map, prepare a plan of the case very easily, and some of that's automated using AI. When they're doing the procedure, they've got a 3D map guiding them, and that I really provide the analogy of Google Maps. So the map is updating in real time. So now they've got a real-time 3D representation of the inner workings of the patient that allows them to guide and undertake a more effective procedure. But critically, and this goes to the challenges of application in healthcare, on the back end, we're able to automate the capture of the outcome. So through using AI, we're able to integrate the workflow, provide a simpler, faster procedure for the clinician, while at the same time capturing all the data along the way. So we understand what did they plan to do, what did they do, what device did they use, and what was the outcome. And the power of AI is actually to be able to start to close the learning loop, to really understand what device, what patient, what outcome. So when the next patient comes in, as the clinician plans their case, the AI can find similar patients and just tell them what happened. So, we're not trying to substitute the clinician's judgment, but AI gives them the power to draw on a global knowledge from all their peers to just figure out, every patient's different, right? There's no patient's the same. Work out what worked in other cases, and having that global database at their fingertips to inform their judgment is tremendously powerful. And to Chris's point, we can now automate the collection of real-world evidence longitudinally over time to track the disease, look at device performance, without the big need for a complex clinical trial. So that automation, joining up data across the care pathway while making the job easier for the clinician, providing the right information at the right time, is the insight we try to provide. And that's just one example.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And these things are happening very, very rapidly, aren't they, in terms of these innovations and our understanding of the capability of them and so forth. On that theme, Chris, lots of times we hear criticisms that what healthcare does not need is yet more shiny, fancy, new, expensive kit. But there's an issue between, not an issue, but there's this theme. The one theme is new healthcare tech that does stuff. It diagnoses or it treats or it records or whatever. Another theme is tech that makes work better, tech that actually makes the job of the clinician, or for you guys in the world of translation, your team better. Does that overlap with your world at all? Is there any like discussion about, well, how can we deploy tech to make our team more capable, to empower rather than to replace the team, or just to make work better? Like, I guess a crude example in healthcare is nurses in hospitals having to walk around doing rounds, taking notes about patients' conditions every one day or twice a day or every hour or whatever. And that can be tedious. That can include human error or whatever. And naturally, with little basic patient monitoring technology and recording technology, and what you said, Paul, putting that out in the cloud to say, well, here's what this patient's experiencing. Who else has experienced that? So there's, I guess, simple examples. These things can actually make work better. Does that kind of overlap with your world, Chris?
It does, yeah, and I think it is that combination of the human and the AI again, which is fundamental, I think, in all industries now. But we've seen it certainly in terms of automation of manual processes that don't need to be manual necessarily within.
Okay.
If you think about something like, if you think about translating lots of information at scale, you're receiving a lot of documentation in, you're processing a lot of documentation, it may be 15, 20, 30, 100 languages. And so there's a lot of movement of data around in that process. And so there are technologies that have allowed our industry to then automate a lot of that process, which is not so necessarily, of course, it's still prone to error, but it's not so critical as the actual translation product and all of that process. Also, things like linguistic QA checks can be automated to a certain extent too. You can have glossaries that are input and so on. So I think it's not we talked before, I think, on the last episode about how we're very much focused on the human translation, the high quality human translation.
Absolutely.
Against that trend towards machine translation, especially in healthcare.
Yes.
That's not to say we're Luddites and we're sort of against technology or anything like that. Quite the opposite. We work with so many, highly innovative companies that it would be absurd if we were Luddites. So, but it's quite a nuanced thing. It's like knowing where is AI appropriate within our industry. It's very appropriate, for example, in user-generated content within the likes of travel, retail, where there's mass volumes of reviews and user generated content on social media, stuff like that. But if it's something like an informed consent form for a patient, or if it's something like an instructions for use that's going to guide how a physician uses a device, that's a different story, and that's where the human must come first.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an interesting distinction there. What about the future for you guys? Do you see AI kind of just growing and growing and growing and growing and becoming a bigger central part of your business and the sector you're working in? What's your view on that, Paul?
Certainly, and even the time I've been at Cydar as CEO, I think it's changed quite profoundly. We're seeing clinicians really engage with AI, realizing it's going to be a part of the future, and they just want to know more and be involved in that journey. Likewise, we've seen industry, whether it's the big OEM kit manufacturers or the medical device companies, the pharma companies, there's a degree of convergence. AI is going to have a relevant role to play for each of them. We've seen it on the pharma side in terms of, we saw something this week with Google DeepMind talking about looking at a genome sequence and trying to predict the translation of that into a disease state. So it has a role to play in developing new drugs. In our space, medical device companies are trying to make their devices smarter, trying to look at predictive models for which patients they're really going to benefit. This week, other companies in the robotics space adding AI packages around their robots. So the robots do things, surgical robots do things very precisely, but you still need to decide what to do, and the AI can help that guidance for an individual patient. So I see a convergence. I see AI playing a massive role. We're seeing a lot of inbound interest from partners and others that know they need to respond to that change in their own area. Likewise, for hospital groups, they're being offered there's a plethora of an inordinate number of little AI companies doing cool things, as you said, with a shiny bauble. But it's got to be able to translate in practice. It's got to be able to be deployed within a hospital system. It's got to drive efficiencies and economics of scale. It can't just offer a pure clinical benefit at a cost. So we try and balance, and this is the way it will go, will be having tools that can be deployed across the care pathway that help integrate the care pathway and inform it, that if deployed, don't just offer a clinical benefit, but offer operational efficiencies in terms of running a hospital, running the business of healthcare, and offer cost-effective benefits as well. You've got to tick all three boxes. You've got to be capable of deployment, offer clinical benefit, but be cost-effective. Otherwise, it's just not going to get traction. But we're certainly partnering with other entities in our space. I think no one person's going to solve for this. It will be some convergence of the hospital and hospital system providers, the AI companies, and the other incumbents such as the device companies and equipment manufacturers.
Excellent. No, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, the history of academic and scientific work to get to where we are today with AI has been going on for decades and decades, but it's mainstream now, so to speak. And it just reminds me of the history of tech innovation in general. Of course, 150 years ago when stainless steel was invented, everyone talked about it and it was exciting and amazing. And now, you don't really, it's not a big deal. Likewise, I suppose, with the invention of the telephone and everyone talking about it being amazing. Now it's not really that big of a deal, and it just is. So maybe at one stage in the future, AI just will be.
I think that's part of the practical challenge. The pace of innovation, the speed of its abilities improving is just a challenge to get our heads around, sort of ethically and sort of social as a society, but also from a regulatory and practical point of view. We're going to be slightly in catch-up mode. I mean, in the healthcare space, we're already regulated, so it's slightly different. There's a tighter regime around that. And one of the things we have to be able to do is really give confidence to hospitals and customers, patients, that it's going to do what it says in the tin reliably and safely, and that also within that we're managing things like patient health data absolutely securely. So there's a degree of sort of a regulatory regime that gives some protection, but beyond healthcare, obviously that it's I wouldn't say Wild West, but certainly there's a need for understanding and thinking through how we regulate AI.
No, 100%. This theme of regulation is fundamental. And of course, AI has quite a big, what do you want to call it, black box element to it. And so why did it make this decision, and where did it come from? Where did it get the evidence to make this decision, which of course is not always manifest in AI. Does that overlap in your life, Chris, in what you guys are doing? In other words, if you have, for example, some machine translation, how do you know it's the right translation, and what was the data or the inputs which led to that? Is that a concern regarding AI, and are there regulatory issues relating to that, or just, what do you want to call it, human oversight requirements?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I think I think with things like Google Translate, I think everybody knows by now that when you put something into Google Translate, that Google Translate owns that data, whatever you put in there, it's their corpus. And so that's obviously quite a big issue, especially not just for individuals, but for corporate entities as well. So I think at that generic level where you're just putting something in, translating an email or whatever it might be, there is a concern about security. There is certainly a concern about quality.
Yes.
I think where machine translation can be successfully deployed, and where I've seen it successfully deployed in healthcare in particular, is at very large scale within very big organizations that have invested resources into it, people to manage it specifically, have got their own machine translation engines, which is essentially millions and millions of pieces of data that they've put into that data that they've then managed through, reviewed, verified, and so on. So it works well in those cases. But yeah, outside of that, unless you've got it in that highly refined state where you've mitigated all the potential risks, or as many of the potential risks as you can, I think then it is a bit of a Wild West, and it is a bit of you're going to have to get someone to check it anyway, and then the productivity of actually using it in the first place is kind of a bit lower. So it's a bit of a sliding scale. I think if you've got that highly customized highly resourced approach to it,
Right.
that can work. But I think the point about regulation is critical, and I'd be keen to understand Paul's view on this, because I was at a conference, a half-day conference in Edinburgh yesterday about MDR, so medical device regulation, and the IVD, or the in vitro diagnostics regulation. And a lot of the folks there from within the healthcare industry, medical device industry, were a bit concerned that the aspects of the regulation are essentially going to stifle innovation.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I suppose I'd be interested in Paul's take, because more from the healthcare side, on whether the regulation of, or the increased regulation of AI that may be coming would potentially then put the brakes on some of the innovation, or do you think it's gone beyond that, I suppose, already?
So generally, advocate for regulation in terms of just the consistency of approach, that there's some common standards that you understand, you say how a model was trained, your expectations, and be able to validate and verify the consistency of its application. So I'm in principle an advocate. I think that the rigor of the regulation, the extent of it, and the complexity, especially for a smaller company to jump through those hoops, has got to be measured with getting the benefit of the innovation. I think I definitely don't want to stifle innovation. I'm a huge advocate for allowing advancement, but subject to, as long as there's transparency on the other side of how things are performing in practice in the market. So I think it's a balance between regulation up front to allow deployment of innovation, to then assessing it on an ongoing basis to ensure it's doing what we expect of it.
Yes.
Cydar was one of the early companies to jump through the hoops for the medical device regulations. We see that as positive, to really ensure we're seen to be on the front foot, to meeting the highest standards of data and verification of application of our algorithms. So we're positive about that. But it does take careful thought. I think I am glad to see the regulators both in Europe and the US really getting companies involved in that debate to really understand that balance between and tension between providing innovation into the health system and ensuring the quality control. What I would say is I think there's equally a barrier on the other side. Like, you can have a product approved, but getting it into the health system is equally challenging. And I think the health systems aren't typically set up for rapid adoption of innovation. So I think that's probably a bigger practical barrier to successful deployment of all this stuff. So let's keep the conversation going on the regulation. I'm comfortable where it is now. Definitely don't want to have a knee-jerk to the media and public concerns about AI, that they double down on stifling innovation, but I'd rather everyone focused on the successful application once it's approved, and ensuring the health systems are open and can be effectively supported to deploy innovation.
No, good point, Paul. Is what's the word for it? Data quality, data sets, evidence, and so forth. Is that part of regulation? Does that overlap in terms of not is it safe or not, but is it helping us achieve broader goals or requirements in society? We're always reading about the problems of bias in AI because of the inherent bias in data. And if most of English language on the internet was written by men, and there's a male bias because male computer engineers or whatever. So, the issues of gender or racism, or you hear about these things coming up because what AI is doing is just mimicking the data sets that it has, isn't it? It's not actually thinking of anything new just yet that I'm aware of. Is that part of the role of the regulator?
I think it has to be, but also responsibility of the company to think about that going in. So again, I'm a passionate supporter of enabling access, equality of care, and thinking about all the potential biases, whether it's ethnicity or other factors, gender, etc. So it's something we should have regard to going in terms of doing what we can to ensuring a representative data set, but also recognizing at the back end, as products are deployed, you can continue to develop them. So in the same way for a pharmaceutical product, it goes through a clinical trial program that's probably not representative of the population at large. It's just from a practical point of view, it would be impractical to have a study that was totally representative from an economic point of view. What they have increasingly required is that you collect real world evidence and you enrichen it with a more representative data set and feed it back into the product. So I think we should be doing a similar thing, have a basic standard to understand the potential biases in AI, ensure there's a representative data set as far as you practically can going in, but also have some obligation to assess the biases in the market and basically enriching the data over time And I think one of the advantages, we can capture that data automatically. So what we're doing at Cydar, we can pool all that patient data that could have any number of factors as a consideration. So we've got a pretty good lens. We can address biases as we go, and that's something we certainly want to do to ensure there's cost-effective and equality of access to these innovations.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, look, we only have a few minutes left. I'm sorry to say. I actually wish we were together in a beer garden and we could have continue talking about this extremely interesting and important subject for the next few hours. A couple points. Number one, we'd love to invite both you guys to come back and to continue the discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have a refresher and an update in January or February or something like that. Number two, just in closing, like I said, I'm so sorry, but we don't have too much time, so we'll have to wrap up now. Chris, do you want to add anything to the conversation or any summaries about what you guys are doing in your business and so forth?
Yeah, of course. So I think just kind of building on what Paul said about diversity and inclusion and access, I think that's a big topic for us as well. Obviously, from a linguistic point of view, language is a big healthcare barrier. So we do a lot of work around diversity, equality, and inclusion in the likes of clinical trial, like patient recruitment for clinical trials, making sure the right messages are going out to people, but also in the NHS. So, for example, giving people access to healthcare and encouraging people to go to their GPs, for example, people who do not speak English as a first language, so things like that. So I think, we could go on and talk about that topic alone for another hour, and I'd love to. I think on the AI topic in general, I think we're probably agreed that it's coming, it's here. It's not just coming; it's already arrived, and it's coming. It's increasing more and more. So I think it's more about our attitude towards it now, and how do we make it work in our respective industries in the best possible way, rather than is it a good thing, is it a bad thing? I think it's well beyond that. So that would be my summary.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Chris. And likewise, Paul.
Just to conclude, I'm hugely excited about the possibilities of AI in healthcare and otherwise. And I think we've only really just scratched the surface. And I want to keep our minds really open, not to miss the broader potential. So I'm hugely excited. We're in a period of change that has its challenges, but if we embrace it, I think we can make a good go of it in terms of finding real benefit and just manage the risks.
Excellent. Paul, thank you so much. And obviously, likewise, Chris, thank you very much. So appreciate your time. And this has been an extremely, extremely interesting conversation. The theme of AI is upon us, like you said, Chris. It absolutely it will be a growing part of all aspects of our life going forward. So good to have this conversation, good to be sharing information and your expertise, which we appreciate, and your observations about the challenges and regulation and so forth. So thanks once again. This has been GIANT's Healthy Innovators TV. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
And likewise, Chris, thank you very much. Once again, my name is Barry Shrier. This has been this week's episode of GIANT's Healthy Innovators TV. We've been very, very proud and delighted to have some of our valued partners on board. Today we had Paul, the CEO of Cydar Medical, and you can learn more about him and his business and a link at the bottom of our YouTube channel description for this episode. Likewise, we've had Chris, Head of Life Sciences from MLC, My Language Connection, and again, we'll have links to Chris and his business at the bottom of the channel. And to all of our viewers and listeners from around the world, thank you for your time. Remember, we are GIANT Health, www.giant.health. We have a big event coming up in December in London, England, where you'll have the chance, hopefully, to meet Paul and to meet Chris. So do please go to our website, and we always love engaging with everybody. So thanks very much for your participation.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.